Stunning Surprise 1 and Stunning Surprise 2. I'm going to spend a little time this evening with examples of Stunning Surprise 1 and Stunning Surprise 2. Now this is my name, my title for these key moments. You probably know them as, they happen at the end of Act 1 and at the end of Act 2. They are the biggest reversals in your entire story, and you need to know where you're going for them up front. You need to know soon, plan it, because sometimes you have to work on them to really get them juicy and big. I use the words, what is it? Sid Field, I think, said it was the first plot points 1 and 2. That's it. That's what he called it. And even Joseph Campbell said it was crossing the first threshold was, Stunning Surprise 1. All of which is true and all of which is great. But I think those are abstract terms. And I prefer terms that are not abstract, even if they're a bit over the top, like Stunning Surprise, because that should be the impact of that moment that you are creating for your audience. Really impactful. It should be emotional, visible, and very impactful on the hero. Okay, we're going to get to that just right away here. And of this first order of business, and in what you're lining up, you also need to decide early on, before you start writing script pages. Wait on script pages. Because once you write script pages, it gets harder and harder to throw them away. But we'll get on that. You need to know where the beginning goes. Where are you going to start? You know where it ends. You know approximately what some of the big moments will be. Who is doing what to whom. The nature of the conflict. Now where do you start? Because you can still blow it there too, If you start too soon, if you start too late, even by a couple of scenes, you push it because you want to get it moving and rolling, you haven't given your audience enough time to connect emotionally with your hero. That's really important, that stuff that happens up front. And unless it's an action movie, it was a James Bond or something like that, which always starts his ordinary world, is running and chasing and shooting. I mean, that's what he does. So, okay, that's his ordinary world. And you begin there. But you have to give your audience a few moments, some scenes for them to connect emotionally with your hero before you can really get rolling and have them come along for the ride. And I've seen a number of European films, British films for some reason, specifically, not all of them, but I've seen them start way too early. And they can go on for 20 minutes or so. There was one called Layer Cake. Was that? Mm-hmm. It's a great gangster movie, but I don't know if as I remember the beginning, it lays there. I mean, they're just talking and hanging out, and it goes on and on and on, and you're waiting for the movie to start. No, picking your beginning. Yes, your beginning is really important. After that, you got 3 acts, and I think it's helpful to view your 3 acts or think of them as 3 worlds. And that's why I broke it down this way by way of example. Act 1 traditionally is called the ordinary world, or the hero's life yesterday. What the hero's life has been like up to, very close to, but not past, just before this kicks in, what you're doing. The ordinary world in Act 1, after the inciting incident, the hero will have a general goal in Act 1 of an ordinary world. For instance, I'm going to use Shrek here in just a second as an example, but the ordinary world of Shrek, how many of you have not seen Shrek? Okay, I figured that would be the case. When I mention these and I use them as examples, please jot down the titles of these movies. It is well worth your time and effort to get these films and make time to spend time with them and view them. I pick them because they're really good examples of one thing or another. But Shrek is an ogre who lives in a swamp. And he's happy, he thinks, before character growth. But then Lord Farquaad drives all these fairy tale creatures into his swamp, and all of a sudden he just is going nuts. He's got to get rid of these fairy tale creatures because he wants to be left alone in his swamp. That is his general goal of Act 1. Then he marches off to Duloc, right, to find Lord Farquaad and demand he gets rid of them. This is all Act 1 stuff. It is the hero pursuing a general goal. And then something happens at the end of Act 1 to drop the curtain on that and raise the curtain immediately on Act 2, where now the goal has become highly specific. That's what I'm, highly specific. And it's often called the special world, Act 2, because it is a world that the hero has never experienced before by the nature of the circumstances. Sometimes it's a physical difference. But a lot of the times it's just, I mean, like if it's a real-life contemporary thing, you know, it's still in Manhattan, but what the hero is now facing makes it incredibly different and special and life or death-ish in Act 2. And then Act 2, the hero forms a plan and pursues the plan throughout Act 2, cobbling it together as it keeps getting torn apart. And then at the climax of Act 2, as you roll into Stunning Surprise 2, the plan gets totally blown out of the water and destroyed, and all of a sudden there is no plan. It's the biggest reversal in the entire movie. And then that throws the hero into Act 3, where they must improvise. There is no longer any plan. But the best, I think, really useful way to see your 3 acts is, this is adolescence. This is your hero's adolescence. I don't care how old they are physically. But this is emotional adolescence. And then you get into the special world where they realize they darn well better grow up, or they're never going to be emotionally, or they're never going to be able to do what they need to do to get to their goal. And then Act 3 is their maturity. Now they're an adult. Now they get it. Now they have overcome some of the emotional reticence within. And they are ready to face the adversary for all the marbles. I break one down here as an example. Okay, this is Collateral. I don't mean to nail people, but how many of you have not seen Collateral? Oh, okay, good. It's okay. Write it down, okay? This is a thriller, actually a relatively big budget, American thriller that was a hit all over. It got some Academy Awards too, I do believe. Yeah, there's a lot to study there. In fact, we may be looking at it ourselves later on in the class. Okay, the hero, this is a one-hero movie, and the hero is Max. Max, the cab driver, ordinary Max. But in Act 1, his ordinary world, he has been planning and dreaming of starting his own limo company for 12 years, which, you know, he doesn't get the fact that that's ridiculous, that he should have launched it years ago, but he's afraid to take that risk. The plan's got to be perfect. So basically, the underlying problem emotionally that Max has is he has no courage. Then Stunning Surprise 1 happens, and all of a sudden, boom, rear end over tea kettle, he flies into Act 2, and he's been kidnapped by a hitman, being forced to drive him around for the rest of the night as he kills people. And all of a sudden, the lack of courage thing becomes the monstrosity stumbling block between Max and being alive by tomorrow morning. If he doesn't get the guts to do something, to confront this killer and take the risks concomitant and all that, he's not going to live the night. So now there are reasons where he's better start growing up fast. And he does. And it's really great. By the time he gets to Act 3, believably, the arc is so beautiful, the character growth arc. And believably, in Act 3, Max becomes a genuine hero. You know, not a superhero, but he's fighting the bad guy because he's trying to save the woman. You'll see. You'll see. But that's another way of looking at it, and as an example of basic structure of that particular film. Okay. Inciting incident. These are the dramatic tent poles. Acts 1, 2, 3. And that, the whole point is they need to keep rising, you know. They have to. Or you're going to lose your audience. They can't just float along. Two main things happen in Act 1, the inciting incident and stunning surprise 1, which ends the act. There's some of these things I'm not going to go into tonight, but the inciting incident, a lot of people mix up the inciting incident with stunning surprise 1. And we'll talk about that going forward, and we'll see a lot of examples. But for instance, the inciting incident for E.T., the Extra-Terrestrial. Most of you, I'm sure, have seen E.T. I'd like to take my examples from a few years ago, assuming that most of you have seen these things. What is the inciting incident of E.T., the Extra-Terrestrial? Any thoughts? Gotta go home. I mean, yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes. It comes to that, but first.
Finding E.T. in the shed.
Yes. Well, we're not in the shed, but close, real close. Yeah. The thing is, a lot of people have said that. Well, it's when E.T. is left behind and his spaceship takes off. That launches this story. The definition for the inciting incident is it begins this story and no other. Well, that's not the moment, because number one, E.T. is not the hero, as you know, many of you have already nailed. E.T. is not the hero. E.T. is what's called the endangered innocent. Elliot, the boy, is the hero. And the inciting incident that starts all of this is when the thing in the shed and all this, and he goes off looking for something strange in the high grass and the weeds, and they open the weeds and they see each other face to face for the first time, inches apart, and they're both terrified and scream and turn and run around and run away. That's the inciting incident for E.T. Because then, from that point on, Elliot is obsessed with finding that wonderful, strange-looking puppy dog and making that his pet. And there's this whole, in terms of the character growth arc, he keeps talking about E.T. as if he was a puppy dog. And then, stunning surprise 1. All of a sudden, when he asks E.T., where do you come from? And all the globs of Play-Doh rise, and with power of mind, he is showing him things in the air and, you know, pointing at different planets and stuff like that. And at that moment, and that's why I think what he says, what Elliot says is, of all the things he could possibly say, he says, oh no. In other words, what he had was all wrong, his assumption about E.T. This is not a dog. This is the smartest, most advanced, incredibly powerful creature currently on the face of the earth. That's what he's got himself into. And that takes Elliot, kicks him, you know, rear end over tea kettle into the second act, where the focused goal becomes get that creature home, save his life and get him home. So there's one example. Okay, and that's the nature of the inciting incident. Stunning surprise. Well, let's see, what's next? Yeah, okay. Stunning surprise. These are the basic factors of the stunning surprise. Usually, there's wiggle room here, folks, but usually 25 to 35 minutes. It usually depends on how long the movie is. If the movie is 2 hours, 20 minutes, you know, it can be 44 minutes into the movie. It depends. 25 to 35 minutes into the movie, it must happen to the hero, and it takes place in an instant. It's one of those. It's not a scene that develops and reveals. It takes place in an instant. It shocks and surprises the hero and us and the audience. And it presents what the storyline is going to be about. just like Elliot, when he gets, kicked into the second act, it very quickly becomes apparent that he knows and we know the storyline is going to be about saving E.T. All right? Okay, this is from Get Out. That is amazing film, an amazing launch of careers here. It really was. But that is kind of the moment of stunning surprise. It is frequently eyes large, mouth open. It is a true shock. It has to be a shock to the hero going in. Okay, here's an example. So Shrek has gone off. He's really ticked off about the fairy tale creatures, and he storms off to go find Lord Farquaad. He goes to Duloc. Nobody's in the town, and then he hears people cheering in the arena inside the palace. So he heads in there to find, why is this? There's some sort of contest about to take place. And he sees Lord Farquaad up on top of his draperies or whatever. And Shrek being Shrek, he's not afraid of anything or anyone. And he just goes barging on in there to take his complaint to Lord Farquaad, get rid of the fairy tale creatures. But remember, as soon as Lord Farquaad sees him, he says, "Oh, that gruesome ogre! How horrible, how ugly! New plan, the knight who kills the ogre will be champion." Of course, Shrek is completely unfazed. He says, "Oh, can't we discuss this over a pint?" Whatever it was. And so all the knights come after Shrek, and Shrek turns it into a very comical sequence. Very nice. And a perfect climactic action sequence to end an act. Acts rise, even Act 1, you rise to a climax. And then Act 2 rises to a bigger climax. There has to be a climax to the act. And the audience is having a great time. They're cheering him on. And then the lady says, "Give him the chair." The references to professional wrestling and all that kind of stuff. 1 by 1 and 3 by 3, he dispenses, knocks out all the guards. And then the people are cheering. And Shrek is having a great time and eating it up, and so is Donkey. Donkey's proud too. But then, suddenly, a reversal. Bunch of crossbows get cocked and pointed at them. That changes the situation. Oops. And then the captain of the guard says to Lord Farquaad, "Shall I give the order, sir?" Being the consummate politician that all schmucky authoritarians are, he says, "Wait, I got a better plan." And he gives the audience what they want. "People of Duloc, I give you your champion." What? Say what? There's the look. It is the reversal. Eyes, mouth, the classic stunning surprise 1, look. And what has that done? Now, Shrek's general goal of get rid of the fairy tale creatures has just become, in the very next scene, and very quickly, he's told by Farquaad that if you go to the Dragon's Keep and you bring the princess to me, I will give you your swamp back. Boom. Now, his desire to get rid of the fairy tale creatures in general has become a specific thing. Go to the Dragon's Keep, save the princess, and bring her back to Farquaad. Highly specific what he now has to do. That is the function of a stunning surprise 1. And all of these apply to Shrek. 25, 35 minutes into the movie, I believe it happens at 26 minutes. Must happen to the hero. Always, always must. And it does. Takes place in an instant. "I give you your champion." Huh? Yes, it takes place in an instant. shocks and surprises the hero, heavens yes, and presents what the storyline will be. This stunning surprise 1 does all of it, fulfills all of the requirements. Okay. Here's another one, just one more, for stunning surprise 1. Okay, cab driver Max is a sweet guy and very sympathetic on a number of levels. And he's, I don't know, he's one of the most time-accurate cab drivers anybody has ever met. His cab is immaculately cleaned. This is something else about your hero. Whatever they do, you know, a nuclear physicist to a cab driver, make them tops at it. They have to be highly skilled in what it is they do. And I don't care what it is that they do. You know, and on all levels. It's a subtle thing, but it's really important. They can't just be a screw-up schlub. You're not going to hold an audience that way. Okay, so another guy has gotten into his cab. He doesn't know yet that Vincent is a killer. But he's just dropping him off. Took him a fare, and he's dropping him off. But then Vincent comes up with his $600 offer. He said, you stick with me for the rest of the night, drive me around, I got a few more places to go, and then get me to the airport in time in the morning, right? And Max kind of hems and haws, it's against regulations, but he says, okay, it's for a one shift night, you know, $600 is pretty good, plus a bonus when he gets in there. So he takes the deal. In this movie, that is the inciting incident. When Max, unknowingly though, but in retrospect we will see, when he takes the deal, that binds him to Vincent, and that leads to Stunning Surprise 2 very quickly. 1 very quickly. He says, go around and wait for me in the alley. And like a good hero, he doesn't waste any time. The hero should always be doing something. So he uses the wait time to eat his lunch and look at, I need to turn this a bit, and look at his catalogs for the cars he's going to take on lease for his limo service. He's been doing this for 12 years, and he hasn't launched it yet. But as he is deep into his reverie, out of nowhere, kaboom! Something big and squishy hits the top of his cab, and it happens to be, I keep pointing it at the screen instead of the computer. It happens to be a human being who is squished. Well, the effect that has on Max is quite strong, and he immediately goes into shock, and he's terrified, and he fumbles and stumbles and gets out of the car, falls onto the ground, crawls away, trying to make sense of it. This is not Stunning Surprise 1. It is not Stunning Surprise 1 yet. The reason is this. Stunning Surprise 1 has to change everything. Change the hero's life forever. Going back to Shrek, he's going off to fetch a princess. He thinks just, to get rid of the fairy tale creatures. That journey will change his life forever, ultimately. He's going to fall in love for the first time in his life, and that will change everything. All right? Here, he's a cab driver, and that's pretty outrageous to have a dead body fall on top of your cab, and it's kind of scary. But realistically, it is not outside of what normally happens in a city. He could, go have a great tale, maybe it'll be written up in the newspapers, and tomorrow night he'll be driving a new cab. His old life would continue. Yeah, it's spooky, and it's big, and it's dramatic and loud, but it does not yet change his life. So, Vincent comes mumbling out, very self-controlled, and Max is all rattled, and he's trying to, the guy fell right in my cab. I think he's dead. Good guess. Vincent plays it low key. And at that moment, the thought finally crosses Max's mind. You killed him. I think Vincent says, I shot him. It was the bullet in the fall that killed him. I mean, it's the kind of cynical, snide guy he is for a killer, right? And even this is not the stunning surprise yet, because he has to get that linked up with one more factor before it changes his life forever, and it's this. Vincent tries to stop him from running away. Points a gun at him, and now he gets it. This is stunning surprise 1, and look at the expression. It is the stunning surprise expression because now he knows the full story, which is he is the captive of an assassin. And that means, and he knows, he's seen his face, he's had conversations with the guy. Assassins don't let such people live. So he now sees that. This is called, ass over tea kettle here into Act 2, because now for the first time, he is in the special world of being a hostage of a man who kills people for a living that he has to drive around for the rest of the night. And the possibilities of Max coming out the other side of this, by morning, getting away from this guy are practically nil, practically impossible. So now Max has faced a situation he's never faced before, and that is called a special world indeed. How is he going to pull this off? Mild-mannered Max is going to confront this guy with life and death. Act 2 begins. And the difference here is, where is it? There it is. 25, 35 minutes. In Collateral, I think Act 1 is 19 minutes. 19 minutes long. Pretty short for Act 1, yes. But think about why. This story is about a cab driver. Act 1, his ordinary world, almost all takes place inside of a cab. This is a thriller. The movie is a thriller. You got to get something going. You've got to get the story pumped up and running quickly. Not in 25 minutes, no. People aren't going to hang around. You've got to do it as soon as possible. A lot of stuff is set up in Act 1 and in that 19 minutes, and we're going to take a close look at this coming up in a few weeks. Oh, the brilliance with which this thing was composed, this first act. But that's why it has to be shorter, and that is another statement of the paradigm being flexible in some ways. Okay, that was Stunning Surprise 1. Then there's Midpoint. We're not going into the midpoint tonight. The midpoint is juicy, and there's a great deal to be discussed about the midpoint. The midpoint is not a moment like a stunning surprise. It's not just one moment of shock. It is, it's a series, not always, but as a rule, it's a series of short scenes in which several key things that advance the story happen, including, and one of them is it's a key character growth moment. And we'll talk about that another time. But now I want to jump to the other key one, most important one, which is Stunning Surprise 2.